All right, at times in fantasy football, the running back position can be hard to put somebody in your lineup on a weekly basis as is. And then you add on injuries on top of that. And then you add on underperforming studs that you expected more from them. And now, somebody that you're starting is on a bye week? What the f***? What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Welcome back to the Draft.com studios, where today we're talking running backs, who we starting, who we sitting, Week 6 fantasy football. Now, we're going to get into our transparency numbers here in just a second for Week 5. However, before we do, just a reminder, we're giving away $1,000 cash to somebody in this community, and there's nothing you really have to do to be eligible to do it. Go down below in the description. There's a link to a video that I posted just a little over a week ago. It's literally labeled, I'm giving away $1,000. All you have to do, go watch the video and leave a comment down below, and you're entered to win. I'm drawing the winner on October 31st. I'm going to randomly select somebody who leaves a comment down below on that video, not this video, but on that video, and I'm going to give you $1,000 cash. And I'm doing the drawing on October 31st, the night of Halloween. Going to give somebody a great Halloween present. Do not miss out on that. So as soon as this show is over, go down in the description. Hit the link to that video, watch it, leave a comment, and you're entered. It's that easy. But now, let's see how we did Week 5 fantasy football for the running back position. Week 5 was pretty good for us for the running back position. There was a total of 45 players that finished their games this past week that we had given a start or sit designation to. We had 34 of them correct for an accuracy percentage of 76%. Some of our biggest hits, Sony Michel, Devontae Freeman, Phillip Lindsay, Chris Carson, all had great weeks, all had them listed as starts. Biggest misses, Josh Jacobs. Did not see that coming in London against the Chicago Bears defense in a week in which he barely practiced, but he went out there, played like a man possessed, had a huge week. Le'Veon Bell, hate to list him as a miss because he only had 11.5 half-point PPR fantasy points. However, he's over the 10-point threshold. Did not like the matchup last week. And, yeah, he barely squeaked by, so he's a miss. The San Francisco running backs. Now, obviously, the huge day for Matt Breida was capped off by that long touchdown run. However, still an overall solid day for the entire San Francisco 49ers team. Both of those guys going forward are going to be weekly flex plays, but I did not see that type of explosion coming here on Monday Night Football. And then Melvin Gordon, expected a little bit more from him. What really held him back was the amount of targets and usage that Austin Eckler got just in the passing game, and we'll talk about that here pretty soon. But Melvin Gordon ended up on the miss list here for Week 5. But now we're going to head into Week 6. Who we starting and who we sitting. A lot of this stuff now going forward, being that there's bye weeks and injuries, it's going to seem kind of obvious. So don't take into consideration so much the start or sit designation. It's more of the information that comes with each player. That's where you're going to get the value. That's probably what you're looking for to help you make those decisions here going forward. Just want to make sure I threw that out there just so you guys know. But let's go ahead and get into all the Week 6 matchups right now. All right, Thursday Night Football, here we go. Giants and Patriots. Now, there's a party going on in the medical tent for all the running backs of the New York Giants at this point. They're all basically hurt. But for the Patriots, I like Sony Michel and James White once again. Now, right now, James White averaging close to 5 receptions per game and teetering right around 10 fantasy points per game. So as a weekly flex play, especially in PPR leagues, love James White. And now there's a chance that Philip Dorsett misses time and is limited this week or misses the game altogether with a hamstring injury that he had last week. If that's the case, more targets come in the way of James White. But I also like Sony Michel again this week. I had him as a start last week. A lot of people didn't really want to do that. They'd kind of given up hope on Sony Michel. Well, last week, came in with 20 points in half-point PPR leagues and really helped solidify a lot of fantasy rosters and help put a lot of people over the hump. Now, right now, the New York Giants giving up just about 20 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, and we expect, once again, New England to get a lead in this ball game and rely on the run a little bit more in the second half. Now, on the Giants side of the football, I don't think we can trust anybody in this backfield. There's rumors going around that Saquon Barkley could play. He's probably not going to play this week. Wayne Gallman, he's already been ruled out this week. And it's not only that, but it's a horrible matchup. Right now, the New England Patriots, one of the best run defenses in all of football, only allowing 9.6 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. So, unless Saquon Barkley miraculously heals here in the next couple days, I'm not touching the backfield of the New York Giants. All right, moving on to Sunday football now. We got the Panthers and the Buccaneers. Now, this one's fairly straightforward. If you have Christian McCaffrey, Hopefully you're not watching these videos to be told to start said Christian McCaffrey. The guy is on a historic pace right now, but don't get me wrong, this is a difficult matchup. Right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the third-ranked run defense in the NFL, only allowing 11.7 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Does that mean that we sit Christian McCaffrey? The answer to that question is no. You never sit Christian McCaffrey. Now, on the Buccaneers side, I'm a little bit torn, going to be completely honest. I kind of wanted to start Ronald Jones in this show. However, it's just the consistency factor. I mean, I know that was a tough matchup for him last week, and a lot of people want to hop on this bandwagon. Now, the guy has talent, but what he doesn't have is that consistency enough for me to trust him at this point. If you are decimated with injuries, if you have multiple running backs on bye, I understand that you may want to take a chance with Ronald Jones here this week. What he really needs, though, is to take a step forward in that pass-catching game. They really need to utilize him there in that area to give him that safer floor. Right now, it's not consistent enough for me to actually put him into the start column. You have that added on to the fact that now Peyton Barber will steal goal line carries at times, kind of takes away some of that ceiling and upside. So until that gets a little bit more clear in that backfield, maybe once we see more consistent volume out of Ronald Jones, both of these guys staying in the sit column. All right, the matchup you guys have all been waiting for, the Washington Redskins at the Miami Dolphins. Yay, said nobody. This game could absolutely suck. However, there could be some sneaky fantasy football value here, even though the names are a little bit disgusting. Both of these teams, horrible against the run and opposing running backs. Right now, the Washington Redskins give up over 21 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. That's the 7th most in the NFL. But what about the Dolphins? Well, they're dead last. They give up about 32 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, the worst in the NFL. Now, Chris Thompson may be the safest bet here out of anybody, especially as a PPR option in flex leagues. He has averaged right around 5 receptions a game and seems to be the safest play here in this offense. Now, Adrian Peterson up until this point has been horrible. He's only averaging 2.7 yards per carry, but new coach there, yes. There's no more Jay Gruden as a head coach. It's now Bill Callahan has already stepped up and said, hey, he really wants to focus more on the running game a little bit more going forward. He thinks that they've abandoned it a little bit early in a few of their previous weeks. Now, Adrian Peterson may be 100% touchdown dependent. I get that. But going up against the Miami Dolphins, who have allowed the 5th most rushing touchdowns in the NFL, if you're desperate and you're looking for a play and there's nothing else available on the waiver wire, Adrian Peterson isn't the worst option. Now, am I looking forward to starting him at this point? No, but given the matchup, I don't hate it. Now, Kalen Balazs shouldn't be anywhere near your fantasy rosters, but what about Kenyon Drake going forward? This is somebody who's getting close to 12 to 15 touches over his last 2 games. We know more than likely they're going to be trailing. Why? They're the Dolphins, and they trail in almost every game that they play. So Kenyon Drake has some upside. He is the better running back of the two. Is he going to go out there and put up huge numbers? No, but in a great matchup like this, if you're desperate, Kenyon Drake, another option. Eagles and Vikings up next, and all you Dalvin Cook owners out there, listen in. This is one of your last hurdles of the season to get by. This may be the hardest matchup you have the rest of the season. The Philadelphia Eagles are a great run defense right now, allowing only 12.3 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. But Dalvin Cook is making everybody look silly at this point. If you have him, you start him, no matter what. On the Eagles side of the football, though, it's a little bit of a head scratcher. I mean, Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders at this point, basically splitting snaps 50-50. Jordan Howard has the higher touchdown upside, but the pass-catching ability, the pass-catching upside, that goes towards Miles Sanders. So depending on your type of league, your league size, right now, Jordan Howard is the safer play because he's more than likely, the guy who's going to get the ball on the goal line once Philly gets the ball down there. Plus, they've already come out and said, hey, we need to get Jordan Howard the ball a little bit more. That makes him a little bit safer. But if you're in a full-point PPR league, if you're in a very deep league, maybe you start multiple flex options and you're looking for somebody here because you have somebody on bye week. Miles Sanders is not horrible. He's just not safe. The upside is there, but it's going to be in the passing game here once again in week 6. Texans and Chiefs up here, and we're basically handing out flex play designations like we're a Costco handing out food samples at this point. Everybody has value, but we're scared of what the value could be on any given Sunday. Now, on the Texans side, Carlos Hyde is getting the volume. He's getting great volume to produce solid flex play numbers. His problem is his inconsistencies. He may go out there and get 5 yards a carry in 1 week and follow it up the next week with 2 yards a carry. The touchdowns aren't consistent. The touches are there. The volume is there, so that's great. So if you're in a deeper league looking for a flex play, there's worse options than Carlos Hyde. Now you see Duke Johnson over there in the sit column all by himself. A lot of people want to hate on Duke Johnson, but Duke Johnson isn't bad. He just doesn't touch the ball enough. Listen to a couple of these stats that I saw on Twitter here earlier in the week. Right now, as of right now, Duke Johnson, #1 in the NFL in yards after contact. He's #1 in Pro Football Focus's elusive rating. He's #2 in yards per touch and #3 in yards per carry. And yet, hasn't had more than 10 touches since week 1. So Duke Johnson is not a bad running back. His usage is bad. Once he gets more touches, he's a running back you want to have, but until he gets it, more than likely he stays on the waiver wire. Now, Kansas City, on the other hand, has proven that they can support 2 viable running back 2s in this offense. We saw it while Damian Williams was out with Shady McCoy and Darrell Williams. Now, Damian Williams back in the mix. Shady McCoy got benched for some of the game last week due to a costly fumble. Damian Williams coming off of an injury. What happens this week? It's kind of a toss-up. That's kind of why I have them as flex plays at best. The upside is through the roof for both of these guys. Either one of these guys capable of going out there and getting more than 20 fantasy points in any single game. The problem is we don't know which one has the higher upside to get them past that flex play. There's risk involved with both of these guys. So until they can really establish this backfield going forward, they're going to remain in the flex play category because the value on a weekly basis is just going to be there. Saints and Jags up next, and Alvin Kamara is still an obvious must-start. No matter how disappointed you've been with him over the past couple weeks, this is a good matchup for Alvin Kamara. And I know it sounds crazy because the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is something that a lot of people still talk about. But right now, the Jags are giving up, on average, 23 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. So the ceiling should be there for Kamara. Like I said, he's an obvious must-start, but hopefully that bigger game, that one you've been looking for, hopefully it can come this week. Now, for Leonard Fournette, we're obviously going to keep riding the volume train that is Leonard Fournette, but this is a very tough matchup. Right now, the Saints give up the 7th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs. But over the past 2 weeks, just in the last 2 weeks, Leonard Fournette has racked up 52 carries. Plus, he's averaging 4 receptions a game on the year. This is definitely a guy who's going to have that solid floor due to his production in the pass-catching game also. The volume is there. The goal line carries are there. The pass catching is now there for Leonard Fournette. One of these guys is going to be a weekly must-start no matter what the matchup is. Seahawks and Browns up next, and we're obviously going to start both Nick Chubb and Chris Carson here in this game. Now, Chris Carson, over the past 2 weeks, has 49 carries, 4 receptions, and no fumbles. The 0 fumble part is really important. That's what's really keeping him distance at this point from Rashad Penny. And he's really producing huge numbers with it. And now he gets a matchup against the Cleveland Browns. Now, I don't know if you caught this or not, but last week the Cleveland Browns gave up 275 rushing yards to the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco really knows how to run the ball well, but 275 rushing yards is ridiculous. This should be a feast for Chris Carson. He's going to be an obvious must-start for me here week 6. Same thing goes with Nick Chubb, though. Right now, he's kind of the lone bright spot in this Cleveland offense. Week 5 was his very first game where he did not get 20 total touches. However, he's still averaging over 5 yards a carry. He has that big play potential. He has the touchdown upside. And right now, Seattle's giving up on average 17.2 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. I really expect them to continue to feed Nick Chubb. This is how they're going to win ball games. They've gotten too tricky in Cleveland. Motioning Odell Beckham into the backfield, having him throw passes or take handoffs out of the backfield is not how Cleveland's going to win games. It starts with Nick Chubb, it ends with Nick Chubb, and he's going to be an obvious must-start here from here on out. Bengals and Ravens up next, and I'm not going to lie. I'm getting really worried about Joe Mixon. I mean, I contemplated throwing him into the sit category here, But at this point of the season with injuries and bye weeks, I don't know if you have better options available. If you do, I'm really going to think about him. It's not the talent of Joe Mixon at all. It's the offensive line of the Cincinnati Bengals. They're horrific, and this is a good matchup for them. Right now, the Baltimore Ravens giving up, on average, almost 21 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. But right now, Joe Mixon's only averaging 3.7 yards per carry, only has 1 touchdown on the year, and last week, he only saw 1 target in the passing game. To really give him that safer floor, he needs to be more active in that passing game to really utilize the skills that he brings every single week. 1 target a week is not going to cut it. Now, I understand, like I said, if you have no better options here, you're going to roll out Joe Mixon because of the matchup being fairly good. But I'm worried at this point that this guy could really start losing value and maybe get into that flex territory here if they don't make any improvements here on the offensive line going forward. Now, for Mark Ingram, he's basically a must-start every single week right at this point. Cincinnati, they give up just under 31 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Mark Ingram's going to see the volume. He's going to see the goal line carries. I expect this offense of the Baltimore Ravens to kind of take a step forward again this week in a bounce-back matchup here against Cincinnati where they can really get that offense back on track. Like Mark Ingram a lot, he's an obvious start for me here this week. 49ers and Rams up next, and okay, the run game in San Francisco, it's pretty legit at this point, right? Matt Breida, Tevin Coleman, they're basically weekly flex plays every single week going forward. Right now, San Francisco leads the NFL in both rush attempts per game with 38.5 and rushing yards per game at 200. 200 rushing yards per game through the first 5 weeks of the NFL season here for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, they have had their bye week already, but those are just absolutely ridiculous numbers. Now, they did lose Kyle Juszczyk here, their fullback. That's an issue. That's going to limit them at times. He was by far one of the best run blocking. I mean, he would open up holes for Matt Breida. I don't know if you saw it on Monday night. Matt Breida could basically two-step through these holes. That's how big they were. Kyle Juszczyk, a big factor in that. They're going to be without him for possibly 4 weeks. However, the run game here in San Francisco, the mad scientist that is Kyle Shanahan, knows how to put these backs in positions to be successful. They're not going to drop off too much. I like both of these guys, and especially this week, going up against the Los Angeles Rams, giving up on average 21 fantasy points per game. So these guys, obviously, both solid flex options. Heck, they even have RB2 upside here going forward. Now, for Todd Gurley, I'm a little bit worried about Todd Gurley this week. Heck, I contemplated putting him in the sit category again, but like I've said numerous times already in this show, I don't think you have better options probably at this point with injuries and bye weeks. But the reason why I would like to sit Todd Gurley if I could is the San Francisco defense. Right now, they're only allowing 6.4 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Number 1 in the NFL. A great rush defense. This whole defense is just playing out of its mind right now. Now, Gurley, he has that touchdown upside, and that's what's really helped you guys with him throughout the first 5 weeks of the season. The problem is, if he can't find the end zone, you're going to be very disappointed because he hasn't had more than 63 yards rushing in a game since week 1. Battle of the Birds, Falcons and Cardinals up next, and this one we need to pay very close attention to one David Johnson. Dealing with a back injury, he may not play here in week 6. There is a real concern that he sits this week. If he does, Chase Edmonds becomes the starting running back here of the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm not going to compare him to David Johnson, but they do have a similar skill set, and Edmonds can be used the same way that they use David Johnson, not just on the ground, but a lot through the passing game also. So if David Johnson cannot go, I would start Chase Edmonds this week. I think the upside is there just due to the involvement in the pass-catching game alone. However, pay attention, because if David Johnson can go, if he's practicing fully by Friday, more than likely he's going to be good to go on Sunday. Chase Edmonds isn't then somebody you want to throw into your lineup. David Johnson's availability, though, is a real concern at this point, so make sure you're paying attention to it. Now, for Devontae Freeman, he's continuing to put up those RB2 numbers that you drafted him for. Don't forget, he's not an RB1, Devontae Freeman. You drafted him as an RB2. You're getting an RB2. Be pleasantly surprised with the production you're getting from him, because that pass-catching upside, he has 13 receptions over the past 2 weeks. That's what really gives him that safe floor. That's why we liked him in the preseason. It's for that safety as your RB2, and nothing changes this week going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Cowboys and Jets up next, and for Zeke Elliott, he's an obvious must start, right? Every single week. It's a middle-of-the-pack run defense here for the Jets, giving up on average right around 18 fantasy points per game. Now, even though the rushing totals for Zeke Elliott is down a little bit, the touchdown upside's still there, has touchdowns in 4 of 5 games so far this season. You're never going to sit Zeke Elliott. Should be another solid day for him here in Week 6. But what about Le'Veon Bell? Now, I had him as a sit last week, and a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, let me know that they did not agree with my take on Le'Veon Bell. And I was almost right. I mean, he had 11.5 half-point PPR points last week. A very below-average game for Le'Veon Bell. I mean, heck, right now, so far through the season, he only has one game where he's totaled 100 yards combined rushing receiving. He hasn't had a touchdown since week 1. And now the buy low window is wide open for Le'Veon Bell. We talked about this all preseason. Hey, do not draft Le'Veon Bell. Wait a few weeks into the season. He's going to struggle to start the year. The loss of Sam Darnold in the beginning of the year only helped this. Now you can go out there and buy Le'Veon Bell, who has one of the best second half schedules in all of football. And who comes back this week? Sam Darnold does. Now, does that mean that Le'Veon Bell returns to absolute glory in this backfield? No. It may be rough sledding for the next couple weeks, but you could have yourself a workhorse running back for the second half of the season. Your buy low window, it's open right now. Titans and Broncos up next. Starting Derrick Henry had himself another 20-carry day in Week 5. Another touchdown and another double-digit fantasy day for Derrick Henry. He now has 5 touchdowns in 5 games so far this season. And now he gets the Denver Broncos run defense, which gives up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing running backs at 22.5 fantasy points per game. He's going to be another start this week. But I'm also going to start Phillip Lindsay in this game. Tough matchup going up against the Tennessee Titans, who right now allow just about 15 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. But we kind of saw Week 5 a little bit of a flashback of Phillip Lindsay, kind of what he was in 2018. Went out last week, had 15 carries for 114 yards and a touchdown, added in another 4 receptions for 33 yards. Big day for Phillip Lindsay. His ceiling is a lot higher than that of Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman is going to get, close to 10 to 12 touches a week, but he's very touchdown dependent. Doesn't have that big play upside like Phillip Lindsay does. That makes him safer, and that's the reason why I'm starting him here again in Week 6. Steelers and Chargers up next, and the time has come for James Conner. Hopefully. I mean, news has come out now that Jalen Samuels is going to miss a few weeks, had his knee scoped here on Monday. He's going to be out, so it looks like it could be the James Conner show. Maybe a little bit of Benny Snell kind of sprinkled in there at times, but Conner should really creep back into that 20 touch a week, threshold. There's not been very many weeks so far this year where he's kind of touched that number. Now, he gets the Chargers run defense giving up on average 19 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. All we have to do as James Conner owners out there is pray that Benny Snell does not steal goal line carries. That's our moneymaker. That's our gold. That's what we need from James Conner. He also is going to get more involvement in the passing game with no Jalen Samuels. Love James Conner this week. Hopefully he can go out there, have one of those big weeks, and help carry you to a fantasy football matchup victory. Now, for the Chargers, Gordon and Eckler are both basically must-starts here going forward, right? I did expect more usage from Melvin Gordon last week. They kind of worked him in a little bit slow. What I was not expecting was the volume that Austin Eckler saw, not on the ground, but through the air. He had 16 targets last week, which he turned into 15 receptions for 86 yards. I mean, right now, Pittsburgh's giving up on average 19 fantasy points per game, and I expect both of these guys to have solid games this week. Both of them staples in your fantasy football lineup. Whether it's a flex play at this point or you got one of them as your RB2, the value will be there almost every single week for both of these guys. They're basically must-starts here from here on out. Monday Night Football got the Lions and the Packers, like both of the starting running backs here in this game. Now, the biggest factor for Aaron Jones is, does Jamal Williams come back? Now, a lot of people are going to be saying, Jake, why does that matter? Aaron Jones just had one of the best fantasy days ever. Why do we care about Jamal Williams? Well, head coach Matt LaFleur does not care about your fantasy football team. He is committed to a committee. committed to a committee. That makes sense. Yes. And if Jamal Williams comes back, he's going to get touches in this offense. As much as I hate to say that, it's going to happen. But if Jamal Williams is ruled out, expect another big day for Aaron Jones. Same thing goes for Kerryon Johnson. Coming off the bye week, back-to-back games before the bye week in which he saw 20 carries on the ground. Both of these run defenses right now giving up over 23 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Both pieces I want to have in my lineup here for week 6. All we got to do, watch for the availability of Jamal Williams, because if he sits, Aaron Jones could be in for another big day. All right, those are all my starts and sits here for week 6 fantasy football for the running back position. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but that's okay. We don't always have to agree. If we did, it would kind of be pointless to watch these shows. We're just trying to supply some perspective to help make your decisions a little bit easier. Do me a favor, hit that like button for me. If you're new here, consider hitting the subscribe button. This is definitely one of those channels that we are very involved in the community, and we would love to have you here. Now, hopefully everybody has a great rest of your week. Good luck this weekend. Hopefully everybody can go out there and dominate their fantasy football matchups here in week 6. We'll talk to you later.